Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of both the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Let's begin with the Senate health care bill. As you know, Republican leaders have wanted to move this bill along as quickly as possible. They wanted a final vote on the Senate floor by Thursday. They're not going to get that. It looks like they won't be voting until well after the July 4th recess now. They didn't have the votes. Do you think this delay is largely the response of the report or score released by the Congressional Budget Office yesterday, which estimated that 22 million more Americans would not have health insurance during the next decade than under the current Obamacare law?
Well, Wolf, I think the same thing was happening in Republican Senate offices that was happening in my office this week. I got thousands of phone calls from Delawareans concerned that the proposed deep cuts to Medicaid over a long period of time would leave them or their loved ones behind, and concerned that the protections they'd come to rely on from the Affordable Care Act in terms of the quality and the affordability of health care would be taken away by this bill. So my hunch is that as more and more Americans finally got a look at this secret bill that was crafted without public hearings, and after they got to learn from the CBO score about just how much of a cut was in store for them for Medicaid over the coming decade, that their offices were also flooded with calls and concern. And I think that's why this vote's being delayed today. As Republicans go home for the 4th of July recess, it's my hope that they'll hear further from their constituents and then think about returning to Washington after the recess and sitting down with Democrats, finding a way forward that we can in fact deliver what President Trump was calling a plan with a heart, and that would be Obamacare fixed and improved through bipartisan work.
But the Republicans have insisted for 7 years they don't want Obamacare. They want to repeal Obamacare. The Democrats, like you say, don't repeal it, let's fix it. Is there any middle ground there?
Well, an important short-term middle ground, Wolf, would be to stop the sabotage of the Affordable Care Act. I sat down with the CEO of the one company that's left providing health insurance in the Delaware Exchange just this past week, and he said the reason that they have raised their rates this year is because of instability and uncertainty about the path forward. We need to work in a bipartisan way to stabilize the marketplace while we work together over the next couple of months to address some of the issues that haven't yet been solved with the Affordable Care Act. Many of us in the Democratic caucus are perfectly willing to work across the aisle to address the challenges with the Affordable Care Act. But Republicans first need to abandon a path that includes big tax cuts and long-term reductions in Medicaid as the vehicle for this conversation.
So what do you think, be specific, where can the Democrats and the Republicans agree? Because you know there's a lot of problems with Obamacare. You just mentioned it. We just learned, the last week or two, that Aetna, one of the major insurers, is leaving your state of Delaware next year. They don't want to be part of this Obamacare exchange anymore.
That's right, and part of the reason they were leaving was the lack of reliable reinsurance. There's a bill that my senior Senator Tom Carper and Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia have introduced that would provide for the sort of reinsurance guarantee for insurance companies that was adopted years ago that stabilized Medicare Part D. The fact that there's an unreliability to whether or not the Trump administration is going to continue to provide cost sharing and a guaranteed issue, the individual mandate, which ensures a certain marketplace, the absence of that certainty, combined with some of the challenges the Affordable Care Act faced last year, made Aetna decide that they should pull out. We can address this, but we have to do it in a bipartisan way, Wolf.
The president tweeted this yesterday about health care. Let me put it up on the screen. Republican senators are working very hard to get there with no help from the Democrats. Not easy. Perhaps just let Obamacare crash and burn. A lot of Democrats worry that the president, and you just suggested it, that his policies, his executive orders will deliberately sabotage what's left of Obamacare right now unless Congress is able to pass a significant replacement bill. I assume you share that concern.
Well, you know, my concern is that we're getting lost in the partisan game of who's up, who's down, which party is helped, which party is hurt, and we're forgetting about the very real people whose lives are at stake, whose health is at stake as we're fighting over this health care law. Earlier today, the Democratic senators came to the steps of the Capitol to show pictures of actual individuals from their home states. I talked about Carrie Orr from Delaware. I'm going to talk about her again later tonight on the floor of the Senate. Her life was literally saved by the Affordable Care Act. I recognize Republicans have legitimate concerns about the cost and the affordability and the rollout of the Affordable Care Act that we have to address. But we also have to recognize that I have real stories of actual Delawareans whose lives have been saved by the Affordable Care Act, and there are thousands more behind them. So meeting in the middle, finding a path that allows us to actually address the needs of Americans, that's what we ought to be focused on, not which party's up today or down tomorrow.
Senator, the president appears to be drawing a new red line in Syria right now. Do you believe that's a good idea or a mistake?
Well, Wolf, I supported the strike that President Trump initiated back in April to punish Bashar al-Assad for his chemical weapons attack against his own civilian population. Assad is a brutal murderer who's killed nearly 500,000 of his own people, and I'm encouraged by the engagement that President Trump has shown. And I was reassured this afternoon by a senior administration official that this announcement late last night was indeed vetted through all the relevant channels in the administration. But I'm concerned that we still lack a clear strategy. On the Foreign Relations Committee, we haven't yet been briefed on the administration's strategy with regards to Syria. We're actively engaged in combat against ISIS. We have American troops both flying in the air and serving on the ground. And it's a very conflicted battle space. As you showed in your clip, it's the Russian military that really is the guarantor of Assad. The combination of Russian and Iranian and Syrian forces arrayed in defense of Bashar al-Assad makes this a very tricky moment. And I think it's vital and important that the Trump administration deliver a clear strategy to Congress so that we can hopefully come together and support the red line that he's drawing and have some understanding of how he intends to handle this very difficult and conflicted space.
Is Congress prepared, are you prepared to enforce that new red line in Syria by formally authorizing legislation, authorizing the use of military force in Syria?
Well, Wolf, we have had constructive conversations. We recently had a hearing on the Foreign Relations Committee about how to move ahead with an authorization of the use of military force. We're in combat. Americans are in combat in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in Syria, and we are way beyond the scope of the 2001 and 2002 authorizations. Many members of the current Senate weren't even serving when those were adopted, and our ongoing war on terror around the world has taken on new challenges and in new geographies. Unfortunately, there was no witness from the administration at that hearing in front of the Foreign Relations Committee, so I'll just renew my call for the administration to come forward with a strategy that would justify our adopting an authorization for the use of force. Congress has that critical constitutional role. We should step up and do our job, even though it's difficult, but that requires a partner in the administration and a commander-in-chief who takes the responsibility of articulating our strategy, particularly with regards to Bashar al-Assad.
Well, what happens if he does launch a strike against Bashar al-Assad's regime, assuming there's another chemical weapons attack and there's no formal legislation approved by Congress for the use of military force in Syria? Would it be okay with you if he did that?
No. We're operating in a very difficult gray space, Wolf, where the previous administration used the 2001 AUMF to authorize a wide range of strikes. And in every case, there was some connection to al-Qaeda or to the perpetrators of 9/11 or to allied forces in some way. But a strike against the government of Bashar al-Assad is a new thing. President Obama came to the Foreign Relations Committee and sought an AUMF to attack Bashar al-Assad and received that vote from the committee. It was never brought to the full floor of the Senate because President Obama chose not to carry forward an attack against Syria. President Trump has already attacked Syria. And I think he's gotten support from many members of Congress. But this is a very conflicted and difficult space, given the role that Russia plays, given the recent threats we've received from Russia that they would attack American aircraft operating west of the Euphrates. I think it's vital that we have both an authorization from Congress so that our troops and their families know they enjoy our support, and a strategy that justifies that authorization.
Senator Coons, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.